What's going on, guys? Chip here. Welcome back to another Pokemon tournament report, where today I'm going to be talking about my experience this past weekend at Virginia Regionals, my finish. I did end up finishing in the top 64, I believe 41st seed or 42nd seed, one of those two, but in the top 64. A little bit disappointing, to be honest. I was really hoping for a day 2 finish. Get a top 16 finish, championship point wise, would have ensured me my World's Invitation if I win 2 League Cups this coming quarter, so I was really gunning for that top 16 finish, but unfortunately did end up making top 64. Still really satisfied, I mean, overall with the finish. 44 championship points, $250. Can't complain too much about that, and I had a great weekend playing my favorite deck, hanging out with a bunch of my friends. So we're going to jump into it. I'm going to talk about my Mega Rayquaza EX deck that I played at the tournament. Like I said, took me to a 6-2-1 final record and a top 64 finish, like I said. So I'll just go over the deck real quick, and then after I go over the deck, we'll talk about my matchups throughout the day. I'm going to play a little music for us, and let's go ahead and get into it. So Mega Rayquaza EX here, as you guys know, one of my favorite Pokemon, one of my favorite decks. I have talked about this a lot on my channel. The Delta Evolution Ancient Trait, when you play this, or you can play this card from your hand to evolve a Pokemon during your first turn, or on the turn you played that Pokemon, so getting it powered up as early as turn 1 is very strong. And Emerald Break, 30 damage. This attack does 30 damage times the number of your benched Pokemon. Let's go ahead and take a look at the rest of the list here. I did play a 3-3 line and chose to play 3 copies of the Intensifying Burn Rayquaza, just because, you know, I think the Dragon one really isn't that great right now, so I really like Intensifying Burn just for getting some damage off for just 1 energy on things like a Darkrai, on even like a Giratina or something like that. Dragon Pulse is okay as well, 100 damage for 3. I did actually end up using it once during the tournament against a Giratina deck, but yeah, we'll go ahead and talk about the rest of the deck here. So 3-3 line. I'm not going to talk about all the Pokemon and what they do all that much, just because, you know, this is a tournament report. It's not a deck profile. You guys should know what these Pokemon do for the most part. We do have 1 copy of Oranguru. Just the instructability can be solid at times, and its Psychic Attack can be a counter to the Regices that could be running around. There was a couple of Decidueyes playing the Rainbow version. I did play 2 copies of Dragonite EX for the pull-up ability, Turbo Darkrai. Some were switching to 2 Parallel Cities, and that kind of scared me. Any deck that runs 2 Parallel City, I was like, okay, I may want to have this Dragonite to bring Pokemon back up, to fill my bench back up, because otherwise I can't really do much damage with Emerald Break, that's for sure. Of course, 4 copies of Shaman EX with the setup ability. This is the bread and butter of the deck, the way that we get set up, no pun intended. Just being able to draw until we have 6 cards in our hand is very good. We can thin our hand down to 0 cards and just a Shaman and set up for 6, and it's very good from there. 1-1 Gumshoos GX. So I did play 1 Yungoos, 1 Gumshoos, and the main reason for this was for Gumshoe Chance GX. 10 damage. This attack does 50 more damage times the amount of energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. This is another way that I could hit Regice, and this is also very good against things like Mega Mewtwo, things like Yveltal, and things like Giratina. Just 1 energy, being able to take 1-hit KOs on most of those things, and being 210 HP. Search the Premises can actually be very good in times as well. Once during your turn before you attack, you may have your opponent reveal their hand. Just getting to look at what your opponent has is very solid. Lets you know if you need to end, if they have the game for the next turn. Maybe you don't need to end, you can play a draw support or something like that. I really like Gumshoos for that, but most of the time it was really only there for the Giratina and the Mewtwo decks. I did play 2 copies of Hoopa EX, Scoundrel Ring. Like I said, guys, this and Shaman are just what make the deck work. And then 1 copy of Volcanion EX to use that Steam Up ability to discard a Fire energy card so that I could use a Mega Turbo to get another energy back into play. Speaking of Mega Turbo, did play 3 copies of it. Attach a basic energy from your discard pile to one of your Mega Evolution Pokemon. This is how we can get those 3 energy Rayquazas on turn 1. 1 copy of Super Rod, being able to shuffle 3 in any combination of Pokemon, Basic Energy, and discard, Pokemon and Basic Energy cards from your discard pile back into your deck. Then we also played 4 copies of Trainer's Mail, just the utmost consistency. Some people talk about how Rayquaza can be very clunky for them. As you can see, I'm not playing any Puzzle of Time. Never had really dead hands. I dead drew 1 time throughout the tournament, I would say. And I was only dead drawing because my opponent was hexing me like 8 times in a row. So that happens. Like, I had Shamans. I couldn't play them, though, because I was being hexed. So Just for Trainer's Mail, just, makes it so that you have a lot of draw outs to hit things like Ultra Ball via Seeker and your supporters. Speaking of Ultra Ball, 4 copies of it, of course. Being able to discard 2 cards and search for Hoopa to set up our board is really, really good. 4 via Seeker, getting any of our supporters back out of the discard pile, of course. 4 copies of Skyfield, being able to have a huge bench of 8 so that we can hit for 240 damage to take 1-hit KOs. 2 Hexmaniac. Hexmaniac is very good turn 1 in this format. It's also very good against things like Volcanion, good against Decidueye. Hex has a lot of uses. 2 copies of Lysander, bringing up whatever our opponent has on the bench to take a knockout on it is the idea. Maybe stalling for a turn if we're behind, if we're dead drawing. I actually did want to play 3 copies of this card. The morning of the tournament, I was trying to figure out a card I could cut, and I just really could not find anything. The only thing I would maybe have cut was the second Hex, and I really didn't want to go down to just 1 copy of Hexmaniac. So the reason I wanted the 3rd Lysander was for the Decidueye matchup, so that I could, if I'm staying aggressive, if I have Rayquazas on the bench, I'm able to Lysander up something they have and take those knockouts with Emerald Break. But 2 Rayquaza it was, and it didn't end up mattering because I didn't play against any Decidueye, funny enough. We'll go ahead and keep going here. 2 copies of N just for Shuffle Draw and also Disruption. 1 copy of Olympia, allowing us to switch Pokemon, is very good. The 30 healing can also be pretty nice as well. 3 copies of Professor Sycamore, discarding our hand and drawing 7 cards. The best draw supporter in the game. 2 copies of Floatstone, just being able to retreat something that has a high retreat cost is very important. 3 copies of the Rayquaza Spirit Link, so our turn doesn't end if we Mega Evolve into Mega Rayquaza. 4 double colorless energies, and to round it off, 3 fire energies. So there's the energy. I did go down to 3. I know I've been playing 4 most of the season, 4 basic energies, but with the Volcanion, I think it's okay to go down to 3, to be honest. You have the ability, if you draw into it, to just get rid of it. You don't have to have an Ultra Ball to get rid of it, like you did previously. So there's the list. Like I said, I did want to try to find a spot for that 3rd Lysander. Other than that, I don't really think I would change too much. I think the list is very solid. And yeah, let's go ahead and without any further ado, let's hop into my matchup. So round number 1, I played against Austin Masterson, who was a guy who recognized me from YouTube. So Austin, very nice meeting you, my man. Had a great time playing you. He was playing Turbo Darkrai, and I was able to win 2 games to none there. I think that matchup overall is fairly favorable for Rayquaza. Sometimes if they get a fast start and you don't draw very well, you can definitely lose those games. But I ended up winning there. In round 2, I played against Matt Ward, who was playing the Mewtwo Max Elixirs with no Mega deck, which was very, very interesting, and normally a matchup I feel like I should be pretty favored in, but he was playing Garbodor, and he was playing Parallel Cities, so that can be an issue if I can't take care of the Garbodor, and he also played some Energy Disruption Enhanced Hammers. He played Team Flare Grunts, so that kind of messed with me a little bit there, and he ended up winning a very, very long game 1. Which I came down to the wire. I had the game in the hand the next turn. I end him to 2, and he hit an Ultra Ball for Shaman, was able to Shaman set up and hit the Lysander to Lysander, and bring up a Hoopa, and Shatter Shot it with 3 energies for the knockout, since Shatter Shot is, he hits for weakness, and Hoopa's weak to Psychic. So I unfortunately did lose that one there. I did win game 2, and then game 3 we just didn't have time to finish, and it was a tie. So it did take a tie, unfortunately, in the second round. Not really what I wanted to be doing, but a tie is better than a loss still at that point, I feel. So the next round I play against Elvin Morales Lopez, who is playing Quad Lapras, generally a favorable matchup as well. You can lose if they get lucky on like a Rocket's Handiwork, maybe if on your first turn, if you're trying to dig for something, you have to get rid of a Skyfield, but normally if you're just smart about when you play your energies down, you can win that matchup fairly easily, so I definitely don't mind playing against Quad Lapras with Rayquaza, and, our game 1, I ended up benching him out because he just had a Lapras and passed. I went first, and turn 1 240'd and took the knockout that way. So then let's see, round number 4, I played against Brian Bendelli, who was playing Volcanion. I believe it's Bendelli, I'm not sure. And like I said again, I think this is just overall a fairly favorable matchup. He did play Salamence EX and a Entei, which did scare me a little bit, but I was able to stream Hexes on the turns that it was really important. And our second game, I think he actually drew really bad, so even if he had a... even if, like... I mean, I was drawing, like, I was playing Hexes and stuff like that, but I was just able to capitalize on his poor start. So yeah, after he just had a bad start, he didn't really have a great shot there, unfortunately. And like I said, I do think it's just overall a favorable matchup. Round number 5, I played against Joshua at Ace Vindo, I believe. And he was also playing Mega Rayquaza. He was playing the Fire version with Salamence. I don't believe he was playing Gumshoes. He was playing Puzzles, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure he was. But game 1, I started Lone Rayquaza, and I got... I went first. I Spirit Linked, Mega Evolved, and I End because I didn't have any other Pokemon. I couldn't have Hex Maniac or anything like that. Of course, in that matchup, Hex Maniac turn 1 is very, very good. But I just End, drew a new hand, and didn't see any other Pokemon. Attached Energy, passed, and he went off turn 1 and hit the turn 1 240 damage. He had a Shaman in the active, so he had to hit Floatstone, Double Colorless, Mega, get an Energy in the discard, Mega Turbo, Spirit Link, all that stuff, and he hit it all and got the turn 1 240 to KO my Rayquaza. So I got donked there, unfortunately, but I was able to bring it back and win games 2 and 3. Game 3 was pretty close, but I remember a turn. So basically, the matchup is really it's really back and forth. So you know, if you go first, you dig really hard for the Hex. If you miss the Hex, you just try to get your energy attachment and maybe send up like a non-EX or something like that, because you don't want to let your opponent take the first EX knockout. That's really what the matchup, really the person who gets the lead in the matchup is whoever takes that first EX knockout, because turn after turn, EX knockouts will be traded back and forth ideally. And I just remember he knocked out an EX of mine, I came up, knocked out his Rayquaza, and then he had to try to set up another Rayquaza on the next turn, and he wasn't able to draw into the pieces he needed to set up a second Mega Ray, and so I think he had to pass, or, yeah, I assume he just passed. He might have Sky Returned or something like that, but it didn't end up mattering, because then I just, you know, took another EX knockout because he didn't kill my Rayquaza, and I was able to win the game from there. Then round 6, I played against Sean Foisey, who was also playing Rayquaza. He was playing the Magearna version, and he just drew really poorly both of our games, and I was able to win. Yeah, he just never really had a chance to get set up, and I drew really, really well. So that's how that one goes. Round number 7, I played against Israel Sosa, a good friend of mine, and easily one of the best players in the game right now. He was 6-0 at the point. I was 5-0-1. We played on stream. You can find that on twitch.tv/theMetaDeck. I'll leave a link to the video in the description. But yeah, I think, like I said earlier, in general, Turbo Dark is pretty favored, but in game 1, he went first and opened up with his Hex Maniac and was able to Hex me for the first 2 or 3 turns, and I just never was able to really get set up, so he won. I conceded that one very quickly because I knew I wasn't really going to have much of a chance in that one. And then, game number 2, I've actually gone back and watched it since then, and I remember making a mistake in the beginning of the game that ended up hurting me a little bit. But looking at it again, I made several interesting decisions that I think doing it a second, I don't know, maybe I was nervous for being on the stream, maybe I was nervous because I was playing Israel, but like I've played Israel before, he's a friend of mine, like I said. So I normally don't get nervous when I play like high profile players. I don't normally get nervous when I play on streams or anything like that. And I don't really remember being that nervous, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know what else to attribute it to. Maybe I just, you know, had a brain fart and made a couple mistakes. There was a turn I could have attached a DCE to retreat my Rangaroo, and I just didn't think about attaching the DCE to it. I was digging for the Floatstone, and I should have Lysandered his Darkrai with the EXP share on it, but I Lysandered his one with the Fighting Fury Belt on it. I just played pretty poorly there in that game, so I definitely deserved to lose that one. Really unfortunate, and that did send me to 5-1-1, and the next round I ended up playing against Parakick, I believe, and he was playing he was playing Tauros, Giratina, Garbodor, Hammers, which usually is not a great matchup. Of course, Giratina just destroys this deck in general, but he does have to attach to it twice, so if I can set up fast enough, I'll usually be okay. Game 1, he went first and won pretty convincingly because I missed energy attachments on my first turn. Not being able to get special energies down or Spirit Links really kind of hurt me there. Game 2, I was able to win using Gumshoe GX with the Gumshoe Chance GX. What it's here for, just taking care of those Giratinas, is very, very good. And then game number 3, unfortunately, I prized my Yungoos, which meant that I was not able to set up the Gumshoes in order to take knockouts on the Giratina. He was only able to set up one Giratina, so if I had my Yungoos, I would have been able to KO his Giratina with my Gumshoe Chance. Unfortunately, since I prized it, I did end up losing that game. He just hit Chaos Wheel a bunch of times, Parallel Cities, and I couldn't really do much there. Unfortunately, that is how it goes. It is what it is. Just prize to the young goose. I really feel good about my chances in that game if I had it, but it is what it is. So moving on to the final round. At this point, I know I'm out of day 2, but I can still make top 64 if I win the final round. And so I definitely want to try to get that win because that's $250 and also 44 championship points. So I played against Jeffrey Strain, who was playing Mega Mewtwo Garbodor, which can also be a bad matchup, but he missed the Garbodor both of our games, and I was just able... If Mewtwo doesn't have Garbodor, I think that Mega Rayquaza is generally pretty favored against it, and since he didn't have his Garbodors, it didn't have access to his Garbodors or whatever, Mega Ray was able to kind of do its thing, and I won that game and finished in the top 64. And yeah, overall, like, I had a great time over the weekend. Got to see my friends from someone's PC do well at the tournament. Got to see my buddy Chris Watkins day 2 his first regional, so that was awesome. Huge shout out to Chris. And of course, my good friend Grant Manley ended up taking 2nd place at the tournament with his super unique Wobbuffet Arachnoid. I always say his name wrong. The Spider Dude and Jolteon, Glaceon, all that stuff. Very, very cool deck. Super proud of him for making it to the finals. If only he hadn't played the Lapras, he probably would have won the tournament. So huge congrats to him and huge shout out to him. He was really happy on our car ride home the whole time. You know, he walks away with $2,500 and 180 championship points now, I think. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Thanks to anyone who came up and said hello to me at the tournament. I got to meet a ton of people, took a couple pictures, signed a couple cards. Actually, I think it was the first time I'd signed some cards. So that was pretty cool, anyone who did that. And yeah, it was great meeting you guys. Definitely, if you ever see me at an event, come up, say hello. I love getting to talk to people who watch my videos, love making new friends. So thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to get out of here. Top 64 finish. Overall, satisfied, but would have liked to have gone deeper, of course. So that puts me at 374 championship points on the season, meaning if I max out League Cups, get 55 points from 2 this quarter, I will need 16 points to qualify for the World Championships this year, which means the only other tournaments I'm going to are Internationals in Columbus, or excuse me, in Indianapolis, and then I'm also going to Origins, which is in Columbus, Ohio. So, which will be a special event. So from those 2 events, I need to find a way to make 16-ish points, maybe a little more if I don't end up maxing up League Cups, but we will see what happens. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks as always for all of your support. That's going to do it for me. I'm going to get out of here. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, take care.